Well, a lot of times we get questions from people on how a pet and plants can coexist in the landscape. And with me today is Al Sutherland. He's the Southwest Area Extension Horticulturist for OSU, and he is going to tell us some of the tricks that he's found on how to landscape with a pet. And Al, thank you so much for allowing us to visit your home today.
Oh, Brenda, we're happy to have you, and Daisy is too. So, well, let us go ahead and just get started. As you notice, this is a bush that should have a little bit better form and shape. It's been hedged up here, but you can see how badly it's been beaten up. And this is a bush that Daisy, very early on, would get inside and push down and mash. And then back in here you can see a trail where she comes through from time to time. So, you know, this kind of spot here has been sort of a problem area for me. Here's another area that she beds down in below the window. She likes to look in at us in the window. And you can see we've got nothing growing there. It's very compacted. If I plant something there, I'm going to have to find a bush like a barberry, which we can look at later. But I'm going to have to find a plant that will keep her out and be able to grow without her laying on it or busting it up. And one of the things that she likes to do, of course, is run behind the bush and behind you and just keep on going down the wall. And one of the ways that I've tried to kind of direct where she moves is with the boxwoods. And so with these boxwoods planted below this crepe myrtle, she'll go ahead and come right on out now instead of staying back along the wall. What this is going to allow me to do is go ahead and begin to start planting and moving some plants out from this area. So this spot in here that is bare, we can go ahead and begin to start planting here because her track is more this way.
Okay. Now you had mentioned earlier that you can use boxwoods now because she's an older dog, and when she was a puppy you had to do different things.
Yeah. When Daisy was first came to us, we got her in July, and the first year she was real small and not too much trouble. The next summer she began eating and destroying an awful lot of plants. We have a rose bush out in the yard, and one of the things that she loved to do was pull the limbs off that and chew on those. So things that were real small or tender, like this boxwood, she could easily bust this up, lay on it, and crush it and break it up. And that's what she's done to the yopon back in here, is crushed that up. But with the things like the barberries, we have a smoke tree we can look at a little bit later, and this crepe myrtle, they're a tough bush, and she was not able to break those up. And she left the trees alone, so she didn't do any damage to those.
So it would be best to start with some plants like that when they're young.
When they're younger, they need something, they're going to have something to chew on when they're between that 1 and 2 years of age, because their teeth are coming in, right girl? Their teeth are coming in and they're going to find stuff to chew on. And the smoke tree especially, we can look at that a little bit later, but it has just the right kind of limbs that a dog loves to chew on because they fit just inside their mouth.
So, but that actually, even though she did chew on it, this plant came through it just fine.
Yeah, if we come over here and take a look at this smoke tree, of course it's been trimmed up a little bit so you can get in through the gate, but she would love to take some of these smaller branches and just come over here when they're down low and just sit there and chew on them. So she would just sit down on the ground and just chew on these right on the plant. And the smoke tree took that real well and just came right back. She really never did any permanent damage to it.
Well, it looks very nice now.
Yeah, it's doing real well. But you know, again, these limbs, when you look at them, they're just so nice and round that they just fit in her mouth just right to go ahead and keep those gums a little bit soft.
Now you've got, as with a dog, you always have digging problems. How do you deal with that?
Well, here's a spot where Daisy was digging. A lot of people come by the gate and she gets excited about wanting to go out and see them. And so she's dug a little spot here trying to get in under. And what we're going to do now is our next project. Let me open this. We'll go ahead and pull up the board, and just instead of having dirt here, we'll go ahead and take this brick and place that centered underneath the gate. And what that will do is that'll keep her from digging. We can run those bricks clear across, and that'll stop all of that digging. But we do get, there is digging from time to time, and you just have to kind of figure out another strategy to work around that.
Now, you had talked about here along the house that some of the mulch that you've used, and that can present a problem.
Well, we used a lot of wood chips here to try and maximize the retention of moisture and to keep out the weeds and to cool the soil. What we found was, especially back in another area under the window where she was laying down, is she would lay on that mulch and ticks would come off of her, get under that mulch, and then they would go ahead and climb up the windows and or up the side of the house and in through the window. So what we've had to do is move this mulch back away from the house and go ahead and put in a application of Dursban that will stay and Dursban up the wall to keep the ticks from coming in. Even though it did get some ticks breeding here closer to the house and gave them a protected area, it's still real good to use, but it just needs to be used farther away from the house in the yard, and then ticks entering the house wouldn't be a problem.
Okay. Well, now you've also got a method of making sure that the perimeter can be patrolled by Daisy.
Yeah, what I've done is just left the perimeter real open and then moved plants away from the fence so that she can go behind those real easily, and nothing's planted there. Also, we've got a shed, and behind that shed, everything's moved back away from the fence, so she's got a nice 12 to 18 inches where she can move behind that and move around.
So that's basically a very good example of working with your pet's habits.
Yeah, I could have planted those plants right up against the fence, but then what would have happened is she would have been trying to walk over those and bust them up, and I would have been dissatisfied, and by just pulling them out just a little bit farther into the yard, they still look real nice, they're growing real well, and that leaves that open little space for her to get where she needs to go.
Well, that's a good thing for our viewers to remember. And Al, what are some of the plants that you found work really well, they withstand a pet very well?
Well, of course, one of those is the crepe myrtle, which I love the color on it, but it's really tough, does real well. The smoke tree has done real well in the yard, and any of the barberries. Of course, we've got a wide variety of color. We can go from purple to yellow or green, and those also work really, really well. Those little nice sharp needles keep them from laying on them or busting them up. In terms of the other plants, we have an Elaeagnus, silverberry Elaeagnus. That thing has come through very good because of the real stiff, strong branches that it has. Some of the other plants that haven't done as well, we looked at earlier the dwarf Yaupon holly. Now a large standard Yaupon holly would work well. The glossy abelia, we've had a lot of trouble with that because the branching is much, much softer, and she's able to lay on that and bust it up.
Okay. Well, you've actually got some methods to deal with that, and why don't we go take a look at that?
Okay, sounds good, Brenda.
Now this glossy abelia is not quite as tough, but you've come up with a solution for that.
Yeah, the glossy abelia, of course, it's very delicate and you can crush those branches real easily. But what I've done is gone ahead and put some wooden stakes in here, one here and back here and here. And what those were is in between, this is actually 3 plants, and it's trying to pick out those patterns of travel that Daisy had going through here and trying to block her and stop her, and then let these things grow. And these were put in about 2 years ago, and you can see that it's having a pretty good effect through 2 summers now, going ahead and keeping her out. Now she has got an area down here low that she really likes to get into, and she's crushed out that foliage. But it's just one of the things that you know, you kind of live with. And you know, we want Daisy to be comfortable and be able to move around the yard, so those are the kind of little things that we just put up with and don't worry about.
Well, you've also found that planting things in pots works fairly well?
Yeah, we've got a pot here, and the containers work real well for keeping her out. Of course, she can stick her nose in it, but she's not, it's not at a convenient height for digging. And of course, there's real big pots that you can get that are much higher, that would keep even a small dog away from that.
So, well, now what do you do with your really tender plants that, you know, she's going to get?
Well, there's a small courtyard up front that we can plant those in. Or the other thing is that we do have a fenced area that we can actually put stuff in a garden area. And that keeps her out and protects those plants. If we grow tomatoes, which we have out here in the garden area, we can go ahead and put those in cages, and that pretty well protects that plant. And you know, you can grow a lot of your vegetables in cages, squash and peppers and a lot of things. So cages can be a very effective tool for keeping the dog out and away.
Okay, well Al, I really appreciate you giving us this tour of your yard and sharing some of the hints that you've come to find out over the years.
Well, thanks, Brenda. We're glad to have you here.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.